right, folks. So, there's been chatter about, Israelis and Zionists feeling uncomfortable on college campuses for the last couple of years. This was the latest report, if you want to call it that, from May of this year. Jewish Israeli Harvard students felt shunned, silenced after 2023 attacks in Israel. Report says they feel shunned by that. And so this was a recent talk given by Norm Finkelstein and Cornel West, and there's another woman on the panel. I forget who she is. This came out a few weeks ago, actually, but this part of it went viral just a couple of days ago, where Cornel West argues to Norm Finkelstein that we should be inclusive of child killers in order to not marginalize people. So by child killers, understand what we mean. So it's fairly common for Israelis to serve in the IDF, in this case, participate in war crimes, and then come to American universities to study after they've done their time in the IDF. And the debate here is over how those students should be received on campus. Should they be welcomed with open arms, or should they be shunned, as Norm Finkelstein says? Notice Norm Finkelstein says not say attacked, does not say assaulted, not advocating for violence against anybody, obviously, but just saying they should be shunned. They should be ostracized. They should not be welcome in social circles. And Cornel has a different take on that. So let's watch. We'll watch through this.
And I know Brother West. He embraces everybody. When he says brother, when he says Brother Sharpton, I cringe. But he does it, even though Brother Sharpton has stabbed him many a time in the back. But I say they ought to be shunned. You ought not to be inclusive of child killers. I'm asking you, Cornel, do you feel that those students are obliged to be inclusive of child killers? I'm curious, because I know you're very inclusive. Maybe your tent stretches from here to the other side of the galaxy. Do you believe that they should be inclusive of child killers?
Yeah, that's a hell of a way of characterizing it, though, because you see, part of the problem here, brother, is that, the history of religions, which has been, for the most part, the history of barbarism in terms of institutional religions, they have specialized in shunning people. And once you begin to shun, then the next step is dehumanization, subjugation, and you're just redoing the same cycle that you yourself were resisting from the very beginning. On the other hand, and here this is where, and Anahita and I, we have such great respect and love for you, brother, but we don't agree on everything. Is that right, though, babe? We don't agree on everything. Because different strokes for different strokes, not in the superficial sense. Sly Stone just died. That ain't no joke. That was at the dignity of everyday people. You a different kind of brother than I am. I don't have to make you like me. You the kind of brother who have courage, intellect, unbelievable commitment to truth, and believes in shunning. I'm a different kind of brother. Shunning people who are connected with killing babies.
I don't believe in shunning as if it were a political principle. It's a visceral reaction.
Yes.
There's something revolting about being, as Harvard kept writing, to be inclusive of child killers. I find that just an utterly revolting concept.
Of course it's an utterly revolting concept. Obviously, you're not talking about Cornel talks about people who are connected to child killing. No, you're talking about people who did it. People who actually did it, right? You're not talking about members of a group that has some collective responsibility for brutality and misdeeds, like members of a religion. No, you're talking about an army. You're talking about a Gestapo who actually took part in horrific deeds. There's a big difference there. They go on.
But
Isn't it?
but we just different kind of brothers,
You-
man. We got
alright,
different kind of
fine.
temperaments, man.
I'm
I don't
gonna ask
believe
you-
in just
look, Cornel,
look at it this
I'm
way.
gonna ask
Look at
you-
it
no,
this
Cornel,
way.
would you corrupt?
If
Would you?
we shunned
One second.
every American who supported the extermination of indigenous peoples, there's not a whole lot of folk left in the
Okay,
history.
Yeah, you're not talking about shunning people who supported it. You're talking about people who did it. You're talking about IDF soldiers. You're talking about people who committed it. You're not talking about people who supported it. I personally would go as far as to shun people who supported it, but that's not even what you're talking about here. You're talking about people who serve in the military and then come here to study. You know, and Israel does this to their own people. You know, Kim Iverson, when she was on our show way back, she made a good point. She says, you know, Israel likes to make the human shields argument when it comes to Palestinians. Well, they kind of make their own people human shields by mandating service in the IDF, right? Like they subject their own people to these treatments because service in the IDF is compulsory. Now, that's their problem, not ours. If an IDF soldier tries to enter my social circle, what am I going to do? I'm going to push them out of it. Of course, I'm not going to be friends with an IDF soldier. Like it's such a ridiculous point, and Norm kind of calls him out here. What does he call it? He says rhetorical something. I forget. He'll let us know.
No, fine.
If we shun
No, but we
the
can-
majority of Americans who
No,
supported the
this-
enslavement of
this
black
is-
people, the lynching of black
this
people,
is a-
Jim Crow and Jane Crow, who's left? Well, you got
The-
some Mormons, you got some Quakers and some Mennonites and so forth around. Then you got the secular Jews in Brooklyn
I'm
who
sorry.
come in with this
This
rich
is-
tradition and want to go to the back of the bus on the Jim Crow bus when all the black
Yeah,
folk are
this
there
is-
and the Goyim is
okay.
in the front. That's a small group.
No, this is a rhetorical evasion.
No, it's not.
Yes, it
I'm
is.
speaking
Cornel,
directly to
Cornel,
your question. I'm
would you-
just not agreeing
would
with
you
you.
cavort and carouse? Because these students are complaining. They don't invite us to their parties. That's what they say. They don't invite us to our parties. They don't want us in our groups. They don't want to associate with us.
That's microsocial activity,
Would
though,
you
brother.
cavort?
We know that's not
Yeah,
at the
but that's
issue.
the
That's not the
report-
crucial issue.
No,
the question
report-
is, how do you stop the killing of Palestinian children
Yeah,
and
but-
innocent folk,
fine,
and how do you
I'm
become
all-
organized and mobilized? And
I mean, one way to do that would be to make an example of the people who do it.
Yes.
Right? Not by attacking them. You can't be violent towards people, but by shunning them, by saying, look, you're not welcome here. If you committed these crimes, you're not welcome here. That's how you might actually stop the killing of people, by sending a message that, hey, anybody who participates in this is going to be a pariah for the rest of their fucking lives. Like, that to me makes perfect sense.
Well, and it shows how even Cornel, whatever position he might have regarding the conflict, has absorbed the Israel war crimes carve-out narrative. Because I promise you, if you said to him, well, okay, what about shunning Khmer Rouge soldiers who had murdered entire villages full of people and tortured people to death? Well, no, you've got to make it clear that that's not acceptable in polite society. Maybe I'm wrong. I'd be very surprised if he applied that same standard to any other country's war criminals.
Yeah, that's a good question.
have to bring power and pressure to bear. It's not whether they get invited to some party after somebody's Hillel meeting and so forth and so on. No, we're not going to spend time on that.
Would you cavort and carouse with a child killer? I'm curious. I don't think that's a trivial question.
No.
You wouldn't.
No.
You
That's like no
you would shun them, correct?
I would do more than shun, brother. I'd probably cuss them out and lose my Holy Ghost and kick their behind in the name of Jesus. But the point is, that's not normative. That's not the only model that I want everybody to proceed. I got my own way of being in the world. I'm a jazz man, got my own voice. This is how I decide to live my life. I want to love my way through the darkness. I don't believe in shunning, even given the crimes that people commit. If you got a different view, that's cool. I'm with you. We in the same demonstrations. We go to jail together, and we have fascinating conversations on child killers and how do you respond to child killers. That's all.
I notice after losing the argument, you reverted to your typical jazz band bullshit cop-out. That's not going to work on me. Is that what he says next? I hope that's what he says next. That's where the video ends. But yeah, you kind of realize he lost, and he was like, oh, well, I'm a jazz man, so I guess it's okay. Whatever.
I'm gonna have to start using that line. What
Yeah,
do you
whenever
mean
you
I
get
owe
proven
taxes?
wrong.
I'm a jazz man.
Yeah, what do you mean I didn't file my taxes on time? I'm a jazz man.
You get out of anything that way.
Yeah,
I'm a
get out of
jazz man.
anything. Whenever you fuck up at all, say, hey, look, I'm sorry, I'm a jazz man. What can I say? Uses that, because he realized what the point he's making is ridiculous, and all it took was for Norm to say, hey, look, would you cavort with someone who had committed war crimes? Again, not people who've supported this. We're not even talking in this example of people who like support Israel. We're talking about people who literally did these deeds, who were literally complicit with their physical bodies in the commission of these acts. It's not even a question. So, yeah, the fact that he's trying to, make some holier than thou point is exactly what our friend Nick Cruz says it is. So he had a great take on this, as I knew he would. This is why the academic left annoys me. No, we shouldn't be inclusive to genocidal Zionist scum child killers. Dr. Cornel West is 100% wrong here. If you want to pal around with baby killers, that's on you. But don't lecture anyone about your ridiculous self-serving decision. The academic left wants us to be stripped of all emotion and intellectually masturbates to the idea of taking the moral high ground. Exactly. He was just, what did Norm call it? Rhetorical evasion, right? Hey, I think that is analogous in the same world as intellectual masturbation, right? And once that bubble was punctured, he had to basically say, well, I'm a jazz man. This is essentially a dead-end way of thinking and only empowers our oppressors. This is why Dr. West's generation of leftists failed to connect with the masses and reign in the ruling class. Exactly. Because you're putting yourself up on some sort of moral pedestal that even you refuse to stand on when questioned about it. The professional managerial class left constantly takes positions in order to protect their standing in their social circle, then justifies that position by working backwards from there. It's so dishonest and annoying. Dr. West doesn't cut off baby killers because he knows it will impact his appearances on CNN and his social standing. That's it. Yeah, absolutely. And by social standing, you're also talking about, and Norm is an academic too, but Norm basically gave his career for this cause. I mean, Norm was canceled because of this. Cornel West chose to run for president to pay off some debt. It seems like not the same dynamic there. Cornel West is still an academic. You may want to dip your toe back into these campuses, right? And so you got to kind of keep that door open. I think that is a lot of what this is about. But, when pressed on it by Finkelstein, he obviously had no leg to stand on. It's an absurd question. The question is absurd. Look, people who support what's going on now are shunned by me if they ever talk to me again. Like, there are people, like, I haven't actually, lost friendships over this because I don't initiate conversation with people as a rule anymore.
You don't really have friends.
Yeah, I don't really. Well, I have friends, but not who I, will go out of my way to prod in this way.
You
But
like
there
your
are
wife,
definitely.
you like your children. That's
basically it.
And you're kind of lukewarm on me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There are people who I know based on their social media posts that if I ever hear from them again, if I'm ever approached by them again, for any kind of, social interaction or endeavor when it comes to the arts, I know a lot of people from the theater and stuff. I will tell them, to go fuck themselves, and I'll tell them exactly why, because of this issue, right? There are people who I know who are totally apolitical in their presentation, who I know have taken the birthright trip and been brainwashed into that, but who keep their mouths shut about it. They don't talk about it. I'm not going to go out of my way to attack them as long as they don't bring that into the world. They keep that to themselves. But no, anybody who has vocalized their support for this is not welcome in my social circle. So I go further than, okay, you had to be active duty IDF. I won't even cavort with people who express support for this genocide, much less soldiers being disinvited from parties on college campuses. It's not even a question. It's not even an argument.
Last I heard, people are free to decide who they want to associate with. Right. And this is something we have been warning about from day one. If you have been jumping up and down and very publicly supporting this, that is going to have consequences down the line socially and professionally.
Yep.
You're seeing it first with people who have actually served in the IDF. And they know it, and that's why they're freaking out. The tide is turning. The tide is turning. You even have cowardly Keir Starmer and Macron over there getting ready to recognize a Palestinian state. And whatever you might feel is the overall political effectiveness of that action, it tells you something about how the timbre of the conversation is changing, as we always knew it would. In the end, everyone is going to admit that this was wrong. There's the famous line, everyone's going to say they were always against this once that comes. Social media is forever, motherfucker. You're not going to be able to do that. The things you said about this are going to be out there. It is going to change. And they know it.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And yeah, this was something, I mean, I remember Caitlin Johnston said that was one of the best tweets of that year. Say, hey, you know, right after October 7th, she says, if you're an Israel supporter, be careful what you say now, because you're going to be in the majority opinion right now, and there's going to be no social consequence for it in the short term, but there will be social consequence for it in the long term. And obviously, I would only advocate that there be social consequence, never a violent act against somebody. Yep. But social consequence is totally appropriate. People have every right to decide who they're going to be friends with and who they're not. And if you're a war criminal, then yeah, you're not going to get invited to parties. Sorry, you know, that's the thing. And look, you want to say, because I know like people who went to Vietnam came back and they claim that they were, you know, spit upon and called baby killers and all these things. And their argument would be, look, it was compulsory service. You know, I had to go. It was a draft. In Israel, it's the same thing. Well, you know what? You could either be a conscientious objector or you take that up with your government. It's your government's fault for putting you in that spot. You know whose problem it isn't? People at Harvard who get to decide who their friends are and who their friends aren't. It's not their problem. It's not their problem. They didn't do it. You did, and your government did. Your government that you empowered through this great democratic process that you're so proud of over there, right? Any way you look at it, it's not incumbent upon people who have nothing to do with war crimes to welcome war criminals into their social circles.
Of course not.
Right.
Please clap.